Welcome back, you lovely people. My name's James Johnson, and this is not my mother, LaDonna. We have read the first 5 books of the Song of Ice and Fire series, seen the first 7 seasons, and seen the second season up to the second season, second episode in the 8th season. The third episode will air in about 8.5 hours. So I'm going to try to make this video really quick. I don't want it to be. My mom and I already made this video for 2.5 hours. A little less than 2.5 hours. And when we went to publish it, the entire audio sounds like we're mice. So I'm hoping this video is not the same. So it's completely ruined. And she left town shortly thereafter. I've got her notes. I'm going to do my best to combine both and do it quicker than we did the last one. So I am so sorry it did not work. Believe me, we were as disappointed as any of you could possibly be. So thank y'all for joining us. Love you. Welcome back. All right, I'm going to delve right in. First big humongous thing about this last episode is this next episode is going to hurt. People are going to die, people we don't want to die, and no doubt the show has set us up to believe certain people will die who will not, and people we believe will not die will die. It's going to hurt a lot. So I'm going to try to break this down. Again, I've got her notes, but it was a 2.5 hour video, and I've got my own stuff too, so forgive me. I'm going to do my best here. This first scene starts out with Danny and Jamie. But this, a lot of people may disagree with me, and that's so be it. We don't know, and most of this is all subjective. This was one of the best episodes of television ever, in my opinion. I know there wasn't action. I know it was all character development and plot, but this is one of the best episodes of television ever. I have never cried with more happiness, at least during the Game of Thrones episodes, than I did with Brienne getting knighted. But let's try to go through this one at a time. Danny and Jamie at the very beginning. Jamie at the end calls Danny "Your Grace." I think that was more of a sign of respect, but that's a big deal. Jamie seems to have abandoned his house. This is not good for his relationship with Cersei. And note that Sansa trusts her advisors. Sansa's also extremely calculating about what she decides to do. When Brienne speaks up, Sansa listens, asks questions she believes are relevant, and ultimately makes a decision based on the people she thinks she can trust. I trust you with my life. If you trust him with yours, we should let him stay. What does the Warden in the North think? Warden in the North. So that's our final answer for what Jon currently is to Danny. And we need every man we can get. And what a great job they did of making Jon's entire episode, as far as Danny goes, being him not sure how to approach her because he's an honest fella and he's not going to be able to lie. And he's clearly, it doesn't say it, but he's probably thrown off by the relation and their intimacy, the contradiction there. So what a great job all of these people did this episode. It's insane to me. I'm going to be all over the place because I've got 2 different notes and I'm trying to remember things that we ended up saying last time. The next scene is Gendry and Arya. This is an absolute throwback to the scene of Arya eating the apple at Harrenhal when she was much younger. She doesn't understand the sexuality of it, but she knows that for some reason she's enthralled with Gendry using the armory. And now she is an adult and she understands more than we think when we're watching the scene, since later she ends up wooing him. So, man, he looked good, didn't he? The shirt, the chest, great job. And what a powerful character Arya is, throwing the daggers and my weapon. Oh, get right on it. It was just extremely well done. However, I've seen Death, or I know Death. He has many faces. I look forward to seeing this one. There's only one thing we say to Death: not today. All right, say it all day long, every day of your life. Eventually, you're going to be wrong. And it just seems Arya's going to die before the end of this, in my opinion. I don't think it'll be the next battle, but that would be a crucial one that would be unexpected and hurt, especially since she and Gendry had their arc. The next scene is Jamie and Bran in the Godswood, and everybody was anticipating this. And as we expected, Bran doesn't seem to care. He just wants to win this battle. when Jamie says, "What about afterward?" and Bran says, "How do you know there is an afterward?" Clearly, that's meant to be this ominous statement of we don't know if we're going to win this war, but it's also, in hindsight, if Jamie dies, clear foreshadowing that Jamie will die before the end of all of this. Um, it was just extremely well done between them. They have to cut a lot of these conversations short because they're trying to pack in a lot of information, and we don't know what's said off screen. The next scene is Tyrion and Jamie. They specifically mention that you can specifically see that they're building trenches, building bridges that are intended to collapse. And later on, when there is the meeting of everybody, and Jon's telling them this enemy does not negotiate, does not tire, does not eat. I don't see does not negotiate. But in that scene, Tyrion says, "Me and Davos will be up on the parapets, up on the whatever it was, to give the signal to light the trenches." So that's going to happen next episode too, and we'll get to that scene in a minute. But I want to connect those two things. So there, we also straight up see the map in that scene. With the way the showrunners run this show, they filmed this next episode. It's probably this next episode for 3 months. And I can only imagine that the reason it took so long is because they're having to film a certain scene, a certain series of events, while in the background, all of the important actors are doing their own thing, which is their own scene later. Also, the scene in the trailers where Bran is sitting in his chair and Sam is, you can see the back of Sam's head and he seems to be talking to Bran, and Sam turns. We already talked about this, but you can see the mist coming out of Sam's mouth. This makes me think that for some reason Sam is going to go to Bran during this next episode and say for who knows what exchange of information, and Bran's going to say they're here, and Sam's going to turn and we're going to see it, and that's when the battle in the Godswood occurs. The next scene is Tyrion and Jamie together. Tyrion, by the way, please comment below because my mom is no doubt going to be able to comment in response and clarify some of the things I'm wrong on and add additional things. I'll try to do the same, but this is the reason why we're not doing a small council with all the other lovely family friends, because we don't have the time, and I'm trying to rush through this. We stayed up super late, too late to do that last one. The next scene is Tyrion and Jamie together on the parapet. One of the great moments in this, in my opinion, is when Tyrion says, "I didn't think this was how I was going to die. I thought I would die at 80 with a belly full of wine, etc." And Jamie finishes with Tyrion the phrase. The reason I think that's such a beautiful scene is because if Jamie had not said anything, then we as viewers get the feeling that we know Tyrion. We understand him. He so much so that things idioms or parables he tells, jokes he tells, end up getting repeated. And that's a real life thing. We don't have infinite information, and the jokes we know are the jokes we know. We end up repeating ourselves. But we, as the audience member, feel like we know Tyrion because he's saying something. We go, "Oh, you've said this before. I know it." But Jamie has the exact same reaction we do and repeats it. I know it seems much simpler than that. I just wanted to point out that to me, it's a beautiful scene because we feel like we know Tyrion because he's saying something we've heard before. And then Jamie feels the same way. So we empathize with Jamie because Jamie and their brothers, it's just really well done. Also, as soon as Tyrion starts talking about Cersei, and maybe I'll go rip her apart after I'm turned into a white, Jamie turns around and goes and watches Brienne. What a beautiful love story, but it's important to me that Tyrion starts talking about Cersei when Jamie does that. Then there's the scene with Jamie and Brienne. My mom has fight like married couple. I want to go back to Jamie and Bran because they're in the Godswood when that happens. The fate aspect, the idea that Bran says, "You wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't pushed me out, and I wouldn't be where I am had you not pushed me out." This is what I've talked about, and my mom, about the end game where Bran, who knows, but Jamie specifically said to Cersei previously, "Fuck fate." And there's this free will that occurs in this show. There's nothing to suggest that there is no free will, but when Bran goes into the past and makes a change, that change already happened. He made Hodor into Hodor. Hodor took him to the Green Seer throne. At the Green Seer throne, Bran made Hodor into Hodor. It's a Djinn particle. It's neither created nor destroyed. So if Bran were to see something in the past that he knows the Green Seer did, and Bran knows that means he did it, and Bran knows I haven't done it yet, Bran knows that sometime in the future, he will go into the past and make a choice. So that means Bran in the present knows in the future he'll make a choice. Does that destroy free will? And who the hell knows? We don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that that's extremely important. And it's the ultimate idea, in my opinion, that if Bran, I think this is central. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, this is central. Bran, realizing he made the Night's King, he went and told the children of the Forest to make the Night's King. Why would Bran do that? And if Bran were to go back into the past to the children of the Forest, hearing a voice tell them to make the Night's King, and Bran hears his own voice say it, then Bran's going to say, why would I do that? I know I'm going to make that choice. Does he have a choice? But why would I do that? And seeing a better world at the end means he would go back and make the horror happen just so he could get a better world at the end. And it's the same thing with Jaime and Bran. If Bran could go back and stop himself from being pushed out of that tower, would he? Would Jaime? I am the way I am, Jaime, and you are the way you are because you pushed me out of the tower. So that's really, in my opinion, a central tenet of all of this. The next scene is with Sansa, Tyrion and Jaime, then Jaime and Brienne. Jaime and Brienne get together, and what a great scene. We know how much Jaime has changed because of little increments, but when Brienne calls him out and says, "What? You've never talked to me for this long and not insulted me," and Jaime's like, it goes back to Jaime telling Bran, "I'm not that person anymore." I watched a review, and I cannot remember her name, but she made a great point on her review. If I try again, I'm trying to get through this quick, so if I'll try to later add the link at the below. But her reaction to the episode after it, she talked about that Brienne is tainted when it comes to conversations with men who may be love interests, because when she was with Renly at the ball, everybody was being nice to her, and then she found that it was a great big joke. And even Jaime, who she loves, it seems apparent loves, and it may even be a platonic love. Not that there's not sexual attraction, but it will never be. It will never come to fruition. It'll never come to fruition. Sorry, bad joke. But in the same way that she was insulted at the ball, she sees Jaime insulting her over and over again, and it's almost not apparent to us as a viewer that that's the case, but when she says it, it's clear, because that is their relationship, and he's trying to change. But what great character development. And Stephen King said something about the dialogue in this in the last episode. The interactions between the characters and how simply it comes together is not an easy thing to do. It's almost impossible to do. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he posted something on Twitter saying what they've done in these last two episodes is amazing. Jaime almost wants to say something after he says, "I came to Winterfell because ... It seems to me that that's implying that there's something he's not saying, like "I love you," which he can't say. That would be the greatest betrayal of Cersei. But then he says, "I don't fight like I'm not the fighter I used to be. I'd love to serve under you." And what a fucking fantastic thing. He is the great fighter. He's her captor. He's been if there was a general right now, there's several, but I imagine him being one of the main ones, and he agrees to fight under her. And what a mirror for him to later knight her. He's below her and knights her. The strange hierarchies and differentiation of power are interesting, complicated. The next scene is Sansa and Dany. Sansa specifically calls Tyrion a good man. Well, before we get into that, this entire scene has a layer of politique to it. We can't tell to what extent Dany's being sincere, or Sansa. But let me say that Dany has not been trained like Sansa has in lying and manipulation. Dany has been in power positions and has had to manipulate and negotiate. For example, when she got the dragon to destroy the slave owner, after she got the Unsullied, and she's had many situations like that. But Sansa is her charisma score is way higher. But their play together both seems on its face like this: I'm going to give a little bit if you'll give a little bit. And that's mirrored in their literal behavior. Dany leans forward, Sansa leans forward and puts her hand up. Dany puts her hand on Sansa. But there is layers of a game going on in this situation. And despite, Sansa says, "You should never have trusted Cersei either." And Dany has to hold her pride. And she did swallow her pride to enjoy this, to be in this scene. Again, I told you this would go back and forth, but there's the issues between Tyrion and Dany. This could go either way. Either And Jorah sticks up for Tyrion and suggests that Dany go speak to Sansa. But this could go two different ways. Either Tyrion's going to fuck up again and Dany's going to be done with him, and that's the foreshadowing. Dany said, I imagine one of you will be wearing this before the end. And if Dany switches, it's Jorah. If Dany joins the Night's King, Jorah will be her hand. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that their strife between each other, Tyrion and Dany, is either going to go Tyrion proving himself or Tyrion failing again, and Dany saying, all right, now that was it, I'm done. But we all fail. We have to pick ourselves back up. How many failures before someone is a failure? Don't think that ever happens. Always somebody has a chance to come back, but you weigh those likelihoods. All right, so Sansa and Dany. Sansa, I'm reading some of my mom's notes and mine. Sansa specifically says Tyrion is a good man, and Dany says he's my hand because he's good, intelligent, and ruthless. And I think that is a key line. My mom's got it underlined. A huge thing in this scene that's easily overlooked. By the way, their outfits are fantastic. Sansa looks both like Cersei, but also a fucking northern badass. A huge thing that happened in this scene is Dany, in order to convince Sansa that Dany is a good person, is up here because she's not trying to manipulate Jon, Dany says, I wanted the Iron Throne. I'm up here because Jon wanted me up here. This is Jon's war. No, it's not. This is not Jon's war. This is everyone's war. And I think that is a huge, my mom pointed that out. That is a huge, I think it was her, might have been me, who the hell knows. But that is a huge deal. But Sansa presses the North situation. She does it twice, and Dany takes her hand away. To me, ultimately, Jon will be king of the Seven Kingdoms. That makes him not king of Winterfell because he's not the heir. Sansa is, if you accept women. And if that's the case, then Sansa has the North, Jon has the Seven Kingdoms, except for the North. And in order to get the North on their side, Sansa and Jon end up getting married. So my mom wrote, true to his word. It's the same thing Cersei said. Trust only one before. Trust only one before. Same Cersei, true to his word. I love your brother because he's true to his word. And that's the same thing Cersei said. I will come up north and fight if Jon agrees not to come down afterwards and kill me. And I know I can trust him because he's true to his word, unlike Dany. That's what Cersei believed anyway. Also, the taller comment. Like I said, this is politique between, it's political intrigue between Sansa and Dany, despite the facade of kind words. And Sansa is getting information out of Dany without Dany knowing it. This is Jon's war, Tyrion. Anyway, the fact that Dany had somebody previously she could trust that said was taller. My mom wants me to note that that's in a reference to Sandor versus Sansa after they've spoken about Tyrion. That I've only trusted one before. Who was that? Someone taller. And that's a reference to Sansa and Sandor. I had only one friend at Winterfell, implicitly Littlefinger, or expressly Littlefinger, but implicitly not Littlefinger. And I think Tyrion was her friend too, but more Sandor, certainly initially, than Tyrion. All right, the next scene is Theon. This is a beautiful example of the differences, or Dany's flaws in her relationship to the people she rules. Dany wants to have her people both love her and fear her. And she wrote, my mom wrote that, it's that she wants them to do it out of duty, a little bit of fear, and love. But I would focus on duty and love. But for Theon, when he arrives, he tells Dany, his queen, who he's sworn to, what the situation is with Yara going to the Iron Islands to take it back in Dany's name. And Dany says, why are you here? And Theon turns to Sansa and says, I want to fight for Winterfell, Lady Sansa, if you'll have me. And what a beautiful scene. But the play there is that Sansa comes and hugs Theon and weeps. Has Dany ever had that? I mean, she has people that are loyal. She has people that allegedly love her, but has she ever had someone with that connection? And that goes back to Sansa telling Dany in the previous scene, families are complicated. Has Dany had family other than Viserys, who really wasn't family? Dany has not had those experiences. And Theon, I want to, in addition to that, another point in this scene is Theon witnessed Sansa be raped. Their connection is because they have both suffered things most of the world will never know. And they both understand each other's suffering. Their connection to each other is powerful because of the pain they've gone through. I think that is a powerful thing. But Sansa, Theon wanting to fight for Winterfell, Lady Sansa, if you'll have me, and Sansa hugging him after she's been so fucking strong in the last scene. Great dichotomy and fantastic, and shows that you can both be a person who stands up for the things they care about, but also cries. If you put a Pixar movie in, I'm guaranteed to cry in the first 10 minutes. All right, the next scene is Davos and Gilly with a little burn girl. This is a Shireen reference. Because this girl is both brave and clearly got some wit and spunk about her, but she's a child, a female, and has a wound. My mom pointed out that this is also kind of like the Hound. She's got a burn scar. And this is one of 3 instances where we hear the crypts are safe. And that's definitely going to be either they're not safe, which makes sense to this extent the Night's King is a Stark because he would know all the back passages, or because the crypts are the safest place. And I think that's most likely because the crypts I think they're going to lose. I've talked about this before. They're going to lose this battle and escape through the crypts and basically be refugees on their way south. You can watch the previous videos to get more gist about that. They'll be safe in the crypts. My mom believes this is a reference to Mold Town about Gilly being safe at Mold Town, when that was exactly where the wildlings went first before they went to the wall. And my mom's concerned that and my mom has written Ygritte let Gilly and the baby live in that scenario. And I wonder, while blood dripped down from the upper floor, and she has not this time. Remember that Gilly's baby is Craster's child, who allegedly would be owed, and who the White Walkers specifically came after when Sam and Gilly were trying to make it to the wall. One thing I wanted to point out about this, and I have no justification for this. Please go back and watch one of my mom and my previous videos called Disease. That will give you what you need from what I'm about to say. I know that looks like a burn mark. I have no evidence it is not. However, diseases are a huge part of these books and TV show, specifically the books, but also the TV show. But in the books, we have the pale mare, we have grayscale. There's all these different diseases that people can get. And when is disease most prevalent? When people are packed in to a small area so that the disease spreads more likely. They're malnutritioned. There's cold weather. This is the perfect time for disease to begin to infiltrate them and become rampant. And I think that is and of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, death, war, famine, pestilence, disease. It's a huge part of this storyline, and wouldn't that be a perfect way to show it? To have this child who seems to be burned, and Davos has this connection to her. Gilly does because she's a child and she's a badass, but that turns out to be actually a disease, and all they would need to do is in a scene a couple of episodes later, when they're refugees heading south, see a bunch of people with it. And it spread. Again, go watch the disease video because this goes way deeper than I'm making it sound. The next scene is the Night's Watch people returning. I guess we're the Night's Watch now. Tormund rushes in from the side, just like my mom noted the whited polar bear that attacked the people beyond the wall. Also, it is just like Jon when he yells to Dany above the wall, "Go, go!" And Jon attacks a white as 3 whites tackle him into the ground, and he crashes through the ice. It's just something, to me, I'm reading my mom's notes and my notes. To me, it's a trope that's common. Just the idea of, you're being tackled. So the next one is the War Council. My mom wants me to point out Tormund calls Jon his little crow. I just think that's really cute. Then there's the War Council. This is Alice Karstark is in that scene. I want to point that out. And from what my mom says, she is a trained actress. So my opinion is she's being saved for later. After a lot of people die, she's one of the few new characters we'll get in the final episodes. But Alice Karstark is there in between Theon and Brienne. What a great scene with Theon saying, "I took this castle from you. Now let me defend you." Yes. So Bran is going to be in the God's Wood with the intent to bait the Night's King. We are going, in my opinion, to have this battle slowly encroach upon the God's Wood until everything happens in the God's Wood and in the crypts. And like I said, this is going to be a calculated battle. Whoever mapped out this script and the events in this battle had everything happening, mapped everything out, not just storyboard, but like with a map, making sure that he or she and he knew exactly where everyone was going to be during this entire battle. So one thing that is of extreme importance is Bran finally tells us, to whatever extent it is true, what the Night's King's motives are. He wants an endless night, and he wants to erase this world, and I am its memory. So that is huge. That is absolutely huge. And I don't think it is contrary to what my mom and I have talked about is the Night's King's motives, but it certainly is not what we were considering, that Bran is the memory of the world, and the Night's King wants to end the world as we know it. We kind of expected that last part, but there's so many things I need to add to this. Endless night, erase the world. In the past, Bran says the Night's King knows where he is because the Night's King grabbed his arm, and Bran shows that he still has the scar. That scar came from a vision. Bran got that scar, not in real life, in a vision. What happens if the Night's King grabs Bran in real life at the God's Wood? Especially being right there again next to the weirwood tree. Previously it happened while Bran was sitting on the Greenseer throne. I just think that there is a lot of potential for the Night's King touching Bran to give us a lot of information. Bran seeing the Night's King's past, etc. We've made so many videos about this. I don't want to bore you, and I've got to hurry this stuff up. So I love y'all. I want to be here all day talking about this. I can't be. I'll have to get to my notes later. Right now, I'm popping it through. So the next scene is Grey Worm and Missandei. I'm probably going to come back to some of these scenes when I look at my notes. The next scene is Grey Worm and Missandei, and Grey Worm. So this is huge too. Missandei specifically told Davos and Jon that if she wanted to leave, if Missandei wanted to leave, Dany would give her a boat to leave. You believe that? I know it. In this scene, Grey Worm tells Missandei, "Do you really want to live in this place? They don't like us. We can go anywhere we want," emphasizing the same thing Missandei said. If we want to leave, our queen will let us. But Grey Worm says, I'm true to my queen, and I will fight this battle for her. But when it's over, I want to leave. What do you want? And Missandei says she wants to go back to Noth to see the beaches. And Grey Worm says he'll take her there. If I had to pick two characters that are almost guaranteed to die in the next episode, it would be Grey Worm and Barry Dondarrion. But here's the thing. If Grey Worm dies, he is the head of the Unsullied. He's the only Unsullied we know by name, with the exception of the one whose throat was cut in Meereen. So we have not been introduced to an Unsullied by name other than Grey Worm, nor do we know any of their character traits other than broadly. If Grey Worm dies, the Unsullied were told by Dany when she freed them that they were free. Their joining Dany's cause was by their own choice. That's when they popped the sticks down, up and down. That they wanted to be behind her. Well, if Grey Worm dies, now what is there? They've been given free will. They were given it about 4 years ago, and now they kind of know what that is. How many will want to leave? Let's say a few. How many of the ones who leave, how many will leave after those leave? 10 leave, 15 leave, 20 leave, 50 leave. And that really does a power dynamic for Dany. if she loses her army because they choose to leave, and that's a huge thing about this choice. And I don't have enough time, but the idea that if you were king and one of your people said, Your Grace, I think you're wonderful, but I would rather fight for the other side, that the king would behead them. But if you said, I want to leave, this is not my war, why would the Unsullied stay? This is a great, Missandei, Your Grace, you're going to lose this war. You've lost Winterfell. King's Landing is blown up. There's no Iron Throne left. Why are you fighting this battle? I don't think Missandei will leave, but this conversation and Missandei's concern about whether she should stay, based on what Grey Worm told her, is the catalyst for the audience understanding why Dany's forces would leave, like the Unsullied or the Dothraki. And I'm not saying they will, but this is not their war. They're here because of Dany, and they lost this last battle. Does that mean that means Dany's braid's cut off? Think about that. You cut your braid off when you lose a battle. This is the beginning of her losing some of her forces, in my opinion. My mom has that Sam is next. This is the scene, I think, with Sam, John, Ghost, and Dolorous Ed. Cute scene. Well, calling you fucked wouldn't be strictly accurate. Samwell Tarly, slayer of White Walkers, lover of ladies, as if we needed any more signs the world was coming to an end. I'm trying to think if there was anything in this I particularly needed to say. Sam's defense for everybody seems to forget that I was the first to kill a White Walker. I've saved Gilly numerous times. I stole a considerable number of books from the Citadel Library. Guys, I'm a badass. I really am. Super cute. I'm sure there's more. Also, this is the first time we've seen Ghost since the beginning of this season, I believe. Anyway, I'm sure there's more. So the hearth scene is, there's also a scene that I think is of huge importance that's easily overlooked. Tyrion and Bran meet privately. Tyrion pulls up a chair and asks Bran to tell his story. Bran says it's a long story, and Tyrion says this is the perfect time for it. Then they cut away. Bran needs someone to talk about his experiences with who can intellectually analyze them. The idea of Bran going into the past and changing Hodor, Bran has wisdom as a stat in Dungeons & Dragons. Tyrion has intelligence, and they have additional stats too. But the key, in my opinion, to this conversation is this is an opportunity for Bran to for the writers to externalize Bran's thoughts about the situation, his situation, but also for Tyrion to analyze it, to say, okay, so I'm confused. You went back and made Hodor into Hodor, but Hodor took you to the Greenseer throne. Bran talking about the fact that he can go into the past, that what happened at the Greenseer throne, trying to understand the Night's King's motives, trying to understand Bran's abilities. That conversations between Tyrion and Bran is the catalyst for us later getting more information and a discussion about what the motivation of the stuff I just said. And that's hugely important. We also get this scene. I'm gonna skip the hearth scene and do it as one whole thing. Hearth scene and do it as one whole thing. We also get the Hound and Arya together. What a great line. I fought for you, didn't I? My mom wrote, love for Stark Girls, Arya as proxy for Sansa. I fought for you, didn't I? Him fighting for Sansa. And remember, he was going to take Sansa at Blackwater. He tried to fight for her. It was his first, trying to do something right. We think. We weren't in his mind. What I'm about to say, we did not think about this. It was online. At a certain point, this theory is truncated online, and the rest of it is ours. But the main theory is something we got off of Reddit, and I don't have the name of the person who said it on Reddit. But I mentioned previously that Beric was one of the people that I felt was guaranteed to die this next episode. I think the Hound is also going to die, and Beric is going to bring him back. They're both going, and I'm adding a lot of flavor to this. I don't know is true, but imagine the Hound and Beric. The Hound dies, Beric's dying on top of the Hound, and I didn't know it was going to work. He was my friend, and he was dead, and they were the only words I knew. And think about this most recent episode. The Hound says, "I hope you're not about to give a sermon, because if you are, your fire god's going to wonder why he brought you back 19 times just so you can die when I chunk you over this fucking wall." And he brought him, the fire god arguably brought him back to save the Hound. The Lord of Light not done with you yet. That was said at the home, I believe, of the farmer and his daughter, who the Hound returned to find was killed. I'm not going to spend my last nights with you two miserable old shits. Gendry and Arya, my mom's got a lot of notes here that she had a lot to say about. I'm just going to read her notes because this was an in-depth thing she wanted to talk about. I'll read them in a moment. My thoughts on this are, to me, they set this up with Tormund wanting to sleep with Brienne and not actually saying it. Clearly, that's what he wants. Twice he says, "We're all going to die, but at least we die together. This could be our last night alive in this world, alive in this world." That is foreshadowing and justification, so that we can understand the motivation of wanting to have sex before Arya has the same motive with Gendry. They did a great, tasteful job with Arya. A lot of viewers had a problem with her. We watch her grow up, and now she has sex for the first time. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, as a parent, you understand. I'm not a parent, but as a parent, you understand eventually your kids are probably going to have sex. It's 99.999% likely, but you don't want to think about it too much. You also, I imagine, are kind of happy that if they're happy, not about the sex particularly, but if they find somebody they love, you presume they're having sex, but their generalized happiness makes you happy, but it's also something you want to distance yourself from. And a lot of viewers felt that. My mom wanted to point out that the younger viewers seem to be more like airy about it, feeling like it was a fulfillment. I did see one reactor disappointed in it, I think because they kind of felt like, oh man, this is just another, Arya doesn't need a love interest. Well, almost everybody wants love of some kind, and sex is a thing humans want. And in this scene, it was Arya. She was being the wolf. She was powerful. My mom pointed out that when Arya pushes Gendry down onto the bed of grain, I guess, that mirrored Arya as a kid pushing Gendry when he said, "Yes, yes, my lady." Well, that wasn't very ladylike, he says as he falls over. My mom wanted, I'm just going to read what and it was extremely tasteful. We never really saw Arya's butt and breasts at the same time. Her breasts, we never saw nipple. We only saw it from the side. She was the powerful one in it. She's the one with scars. She also found out that she was also playing the lying game and did it wonderfully. Reading him, I didn't keep count. Yes, you did. It was just extremely well done. But Gendry still surprised Arya, saying that he was Robert Baratheon's bastard. You have a son, I have a daughter. We'll join our houses. Just, my mom wrote, skipped a generation. The irony to me, my mom and I talked about this, is if Gendry is Cersei's son, that puts a whole new spin on them having sex, that Arya just made love to the son of a woman that is on her list. And later on, we see when the song is happening with Gendry, Podrick singing the song, she's awake in bed and he's asleep. I think that it's a cute thing because it plays on like the stereotypical women wanting to cuddle and talk afterwards. None of this is applicable 100%, but it is kind of a stereotype that women want to talk and cuddle afterwards and men tend to fall right asleep, but also because Arya is a fucking badass and is always wide open in a way. My mom also talked about Gendry saying when Gendry is being sent to the wall initially at King's Landing and Arya is being picked on by Hot Pie and Lamy, Gendry threatens Hot Pie and Lamy and says, "When I hit that steel, I make it sing. Are you going to sing when I hit you?" There's also something about ringing her bell, the idea that all of this is, without being a parent, it is foreshadowing for the sex between them. I think Gendry has a possibility to die this next episode. The issue I have with that is he has not If he is Cersei's child, that has not been revealed yet. And I think Gendry will live to the end. I'm not sure if his kinship to Cersei will ever be publicly known. I think the audience will find out. I'm not sure. I think that might die with Jaime and Cersei, or he'll find out at the last minute. I think it's more likely it dies with Jaime and Cersei, that we never know. And isn't that ironic that Cersei's only living child at the end is someone who doesn't know he's Cersei's child. So now the hearth scenes. My mom wrote, it's a pissing contest, Giantsbane versus Kingslayer. I don't agree with that. I do think a lot of people didn't understand the Giantsbane. A lot of people, straw man. Some people I saw react didn't understand Giantsbane's Tormund's comments there. He is trying to use his wildling courting understanding to woo Brienne. And before he says, he calls Jaime King Killer, and Jaime's like, I guess they call me that somewhere. That may be, by the way, a reference to the King Killer Chronicles, The Name of the Wind, and the subsequent books by Patrick Rothfuss. But Jaime calls, my mom thinks that's foreshadowing, by the way. Jaime has never seen a wildling before. It's the first wildling we know of that Jaime's ever seen. And Tormund is trying to woo Brienne. He even says, they call me Giantsbane. And if you go back and watch that scene, his eyes go to Brienne, want to know why, before he tells the story. I totally believe that story, by the way. I don't think his understanding of, I'm willing to believe it. And this goes back to the scene with Lyanna Mormont, and all the scenes with Lyanna Mormont. Lyanna Mormont very well may be Tormund's kid. He says he fucked a bear. The Mormonts are bears. They're on Bear Island, which is really far up north, and could easily have been above the wall getting food, or who the hell knows what, trading. It's very possible that Tormund actually had sex with a Mormont, and that's what he's saying was with a bear, and that Lyanna is his kid, and a Mormont bear like mixed with wildling would be a perfect combination for that little badass Lyanna. Tormund also said previously at Hardhome about Jon Snow, he's prettier than both my daughters. A daughter, he's not talking about Lyanna, but that could be foreshadowing for him being Lyanna's father. But what a hilarious story about the giant's milk. Then we cut away, we come back, and Tyrion says, I think we might live, and everybody laughs, because there's like this, I just cannot express how well they got a feeling across in this episode of both being in the moment with all these different characters, but also impending doom. To quote Maester Aemon, nothing makes the past a sweeter place to visit than the prospect of an imminent death. The prospect of imminent death. I've maybe screwed up the last bit a little bit, but they did such a great job, and the song by Pod at the end really closed that out. It was that part, she never wanted to leave. They know that this peace they are experiencing in this very moment will end any moment, and they never want to leave. They know they have to. But I'm missing something about that scene. Super cute with Tyrion pouring the extra wine and doing the face. That face is a throwback to the face Tyrion's done before when he's been drunk. I can't do it, but he did it. So they come back to that scene, and the hearth scene, and Tyrion says, I think we'll live. And he starts going through the list of all the things people have done. I want to point out something. In the first episode of the first season, Jaime confronts Ned Stark and tries to get him to fight an attorney, and Ned Stark says, I won't fight an attorney. And Jaime questions him, prods him, and Ned Stark says, I don't fight because I don't want someone to know what I'm capable of. We have never seen Davos fight, I believe. Not really. We've seen him begin to fight, but we've never actually seen him fight. And he says over and over that he's not a good fighter. Well, he's a smuggler, which requires to a certain extent an amount of charisma and deception, which to me means that wouldn't that be a great setup and a great tactic for him to be lying about how good he is? I really want that to sink in. That could be entirely possible. And he emphasized it in this Tyrion says, survived the Battle of the Bastards and the Battle of Blackwater Bay, all without any combat capability, Davos says. And then we get Tyrion describing Brienne's accomplishments, but he describes her as Sir Brienne and then backs off. I can't express enough how much I fucking loved the scene between Brienne and Jaime. I know all of us probably did, but god damn, what a fucking great scene. And that oath, the knighting oath, Jaime chose those words. He chose what to make Brienne swear to. And those words mean something to Brienne. She will abide by those for the rest of her life. And a lot of people have said that this scene made them think Brienne's going to die. Absolutely possible. I don't think so. I think Brienne's Lord Commander at the end. But it is, and I think that's the point. They're showing us all these moments because it's character development and important to later storyline, but because they want to play with us. They want us to think some people will die who won't, and think other people will survive who die. But certainly, like I said, this next episode is going to fucking hurt. Any knight can make another knight. That is what happened with Duncan the Tall, Dunk the Lunk. He was made into a knight by his hedge knight. He was squire to a hedge knight who knighted Duncan right before the hedge knight died. And now Duncan is a knight. The first time ever, lost, and then he immediately finds baby young Aegon egg. It's also been revealed by George R. R. Martin. This is probably a bad thing for him to reveal, that they are related, that Brienne is to some extent descended from Duncan. By the way, at the and I skipped something. In the scene between the Hound and Arya, when Beric Dondarrion walks up, the Hound says, God, might as well be a bloody wedding. That is foreshadowing for the last scene we'll get in all of this series. Once the battle is over, once everything has been settled, we then skip forward, and it will be an epilogue in the books that is treated as an omniscient character perspective, which we've never gotten in the books, because Bran is in a way omniscient. So we get an omniscient narrator because we literally have an omniscient character. But it's a wedding, which is why everybody gets brought back together. And George R. R. Martin talked about wondering at the end of Lord of the Rings, well, I don't understand what happened later. What was their economic policy, their war policy, their army policy, their et cetera? Of course, we're not going to get all of that. Like, okay, so they had this much gold and they invested it there. But we need to see that, given enough time, this is a better world, a constitutional democracy, the kingship giving up their descendancy, their having a right by birth to the throne. We've had so many votes, a welfare system with everybody being refugees at the end and needing food, guaranteeing that everybody will get food, versus the rich, the wheel pressing against the people at the bottom. Education being a huge thing. No women or children. The Sept of Baelor, the reduction of power in religion. The Sept of Baelor is blown up. Magic will be much less a thing than the Baelor the Blessed statue was destroyed. Instead, we'll get a statue of Tyrion, who on his deathbed, constitutional democracy, the beginnings of new science with disease being understood, partly because of people that do horrible things like Qyburn. Point is, at the end, we're going to get a wedding with everybody together, and that's what the Hound was foreshadowing. That was a extra point there. My mom wanted to point out that the drink that Tormund is drinking is fermented goat's milk, we presume. My mom called it kumis, K-U-M-I-S. Proper northern drink. It's what Jon drank with Mance Rayder, she believes. It could be something else, but it seems like I don't need to go too far into it. To go back, that's a real thing, and I know that people in either the Mongolians or the nomadic tribes of horse herders in Middle Asia do that, ferment milk, and I'm sure it happens all over the world. Sam and Jorah, it seemed really odd when LaDonna turned around to speak to Jorah at the end of their conversation and said, again, she said, Jorah said the crypts were safe, but she turns around to Jorah and says, I wish you good fortune, cousin. I guess that was a reminder that they're related for the viewers who didn't remember that, but it seemed surreal, almost as if Jorah's going to die. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I don't fucking I don't fucking know, because so many are going to die. My mom wanted to point out that Sam giving Jorah Heart's Bane is perfect because Danny is the bane of Jorah's heart. He'll always be loyal to her. He'll never get her. Pod sings. The song he sings is Jenny of Old Stones. We only have 2 lines, I believe, of that song in the books, and we got the entirety of the song in this episode. I mentioned previously the surreal feeling it gives. What a fucking beautiful feeling of imminent doom, but also the moment before it. They held each other close and turned their backs upon the end. The waves that split asunder and the black that ate the skies. The flames that shot so high and hot that even dragons burned would never be the final sight that fell upon their eyes. A fly upon the wall, the waves, the sea wind whipped and churned the city of 1,000 years, and all that men had learned, the doom consumed it all alike, and neither of them turned. So anyway, the Jenny of Oldstone songs, my mom wants to emphasize the history of it because it is fucking deep and it's not even 100% clear at this point. So I'm going to try to break through this real quick. Aegon, that would be Egg from the Duncan Egg Tales, who was a kid in the Duncan Egg Tales, and the Duncan Egg Tales are, every story is a couple of years apart. He grows up. We haven't finished the Duncan Egg Tales, but we know Egg eventually becomes king, partly because Aemon, the Maester at the Wall, who is Egg's older brother, gave up the throne. So Aegon ended up the ruler. Aegon had a son named Duncan and another son named Jaehaerys. Forget about Jaehaerys for a minute. Duncan was the eldest, and he named him after Duncan the Tall. Duncan, the prince, became known as Duncan the Small. Duncan was betrothed by his father to the daughter of Lionel Baratheon, and Duncan instead fell in love with a commoner named Jenny. And he told his dad, "I'm not going to marry the woman you want me to." And his dad said, "Yes, you will." And Egg said, "Yes, you will." And Duncan said, "No, I won't." And Egg said, "Then you're going to give up your rights." And Duncan said, "I give them up," and walked away. That ended up creating a short but bloody war between the Baratheons and the Targaryens. It ended sometime around the time it ended. Summerhall, which is a kind of a summer house for the kings, like a Camp David, a location they can go to get away but still be kingly. For some reason, Aegon, the king, Duncan, his son, Prince Duncan the Small, and Duncan the Tall, who was the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard at the time, were at Summerhall together. And again, remember, Duncan had given up his rights and came back. We don't know why he came back. He came back in this moment, and Summerhall burned down, killing Aegon the King, killing Duncan the Tall, and killing Duncan the Small. And we don't know why the fire happened. And that led to Jaehaerys being king. Jaehaerys' son was Aerys the Mad King. But that's neither here nor there. When the tournament at Harrenhal happened, that happened many years later. Lyanna was there. Rhaegar was there. At the last night of the tournament, Rhaegar sang a song he wrote. We've never been told what the song is. We presume it's Jenny of Oldstone. And while he's singing the song, Lyanna cried and left the room. And the next day, Lyanna was stolen by Rhaegar. And now it's being sung. Rhaegar, if he's saying this song, he wrote it. He wrote Jenny of Oldstones, I believe. It's about a girl who, who knows, because we don't know the story of Summerhall. Rhaegar was also, by the way, obsessed with Summerhall. And there was allegedly a, I may be wrong about it, but albino old woman, the ghost of High Heart, that could have been Jenny, although that might be wrong. And it's a woods witch, so to speak. Rhaegar was obsessed with Summerhall and would go there many times, even though it was burned to the ground. So it wasn't like he was on vacation. But he sang a song to Lyanna about a girl who married a prince who gave up his rights to be with her. And that is both Lyanna and started a war as a result of it, between the Baratheons and the Targaryens. And Lyanna ended up going with Rhaegar, creating a war between the Baratheons and the Targaryens. And anyway, the song has a fuck ton of depth. And again, my mom will probably comment down below some more information. All right, so this leads to the last scenes. Jon and Dany together. God, that fucking writing is incredible. Who's that? Lyanna Stark, and then they pause long enough for every single viewer to go, my mother, or at least think it. And it's broken by Dany saying, my brother. And it just is impeccably written, and I get tearful every time I hear Jon say, and the last thing she did as she bled to death on her birthing bed. That line, as she bled to death on her birthing bed. And he just found this out about his mother's death, about his true lineage, about what his father, Ned Stark, his father, really did for him. There's just every time I think about Jon thinking about this, there's no way it doesn't lead to another thought. Rhaegar, well, that means God. Oh my God, Aemon was my great grand. Dany is my aunt. It leads thought to thought to thought to thought to thought. It's overwhelming, emotional in both good and bad ways. And he tells the woman he loves it, who is his relative. And she did such a good job acting that. She goes from many different justifiable emotions at the very end, specifically to almost an awe, like I've got a relative, to I don't want to describe it specifically. It's extremely well done. But when Jon says, my name, my real name is Aegon Targaryen, she is aghast. And she specifically questions him, how do you know this? Well, my brother saw it in a vision. And my best friend read it in a book. All he read, by the way, in that book is that Rhaegar and Lyanna were married. Nothing else. And not even that it was Lyanna. I believe it was that it was weddings. His marriage was annulled and he was wed in secret. This goes back to what my mom and I talked about in the last episode. Howland Reed is the answer to that question. Howland Reed is the literal witness who can say what happened at the Tower of Joy. But Dany's reaction is, my mom says, Dany cringes exactly like Cersei cringed when she saw Jaime's hand at the tower, or at the Sept when they were. No, I think she may have meant when Jaime first walks in to see Cersei after returning from the travels from the north down, but also in the Sept before they have sex in the Sept. Dany immediately thinks this is a threat, and that's understandable, as much as it pains me to say so, because I wish she didn't do that. It's understandable. She wants the throne, and she's now in the same way it's a surprise to Jon, in more so than I believe fair to Dany, but it's an extreme surprise to Dany. Oh my God, I'm the fucking heir. I might not be the heir. You're a threat. The list goes on and on for why it's justifiable. However, Jon is her love. I mean, do you want to work this out, or do you want to immediately treat anybody as a threat? And it's perfectly encapsulated, in my opinion, when we hear the horn blow and Jon immediately turns and Dany focuses her eyes on Jon. Jon, exactly like Sam said, you gave up your kingship to protect your people. Would she do the same? Jon hears the horn and immediately turns to know if he needs to act immediately to protect his people. And Dany stares at Jon. Again, Jon specifically says the word Dany, the name Dany again, which is their brother and sister, in my opinion. I know a lot of y'all think we're full of shit, and maybe we are, and if we're wrong, we're wrong. And we don't know more, we admit it to ourselves more than anyone could ever tell us. We know we don't know, and that's why it's beautiful, because we don't know how this ends, and we can talk about it. So, they then end up on the parapets. We get the vision of Tyrion and Tyrion and Jon and Dany and a few others watching this happen. Jon looks to Dany, in my opinion, implicitly to say, we need to go get the dragons, which was, I'm sure, the plan already. And Dany looks at him like, we're not done with this fucking conversation, but also, yes, we need to go get the dragons. And they leave to get the dragons. Then we get the White Walker stepping on the snow, and we get the implication that they are now headed that way. My mom wanted to point out that there is a potential alternative to what will, in my opinion, occur, the big battle, which would be that the White Walkers would go around them and just completely avoid them. That's not going to happen, but it could. I want to talk a little bit about what this battle in the next episode will look like. That horn blew because someone saw the White Walkers coming, but it is completely dark. With the exception of the little light above, it is completely dark. So they can't see the White Walkers and the whites. Somebody saw them, which is why they gave the warning, but the people standing on the parapets have a little light around them, which is not undilating their eyes a little bit, but in addition, it's completely dark. So other than the tree line, you can't see shit beyond like 100 yards, at the most 100 yards. So when the attack happens of whites, they're going to hear it before they see it. And then just a fucking flood. In addition to that, we haven't seen the dragon and the Night's King yet. It would be a cool shot, though it would make a lot of sense for them to not be able to see what's in the distance in the dark, and to see the clouds light up. The clouds, see everything light up with blue light, almost like blue lightning in the clouds in the distance, and to be able to just see all of this fucking army and it go dark again, and then see it again, all this fucking army, and then go dark again, and then see it again as the dragon and the Night's King fly out of the clouds blowing the blue fire. It doesn't really make any sense that they're blowing blue fire for no reason, but they did say with the Umber Kid that the Night's King was sending a message. So fear is part of the ability to win a war. Make the other side scared so everybody leaves. But what a fucking beautiful scene. This is going to be an epic battle. It is going to hurt, and I love every single one of y'all. Thank y'all for joining us on this journey. I have a few more things to add based on the notes I fucking skipped. So give me 2 seconds, and then we'll be done. Heart's going to say. Oh, and the White Walker song at the very end of this most recent episode, we hear a tick, 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 tick. And it reminds me of time. And Bran's impact on time is hugely important. The idea of going into the past is hugely important, but also tick, 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 tick. Time is running out. Men are easily manipulated, is the phrase Sansa uses with Dany. That could be foreshadowing for Dany joining the Night's King and being the ultimate mental control over the Night's King. I think that's pretty much it. All right. I fucking hope this video works. I love every single one of y'all. Y'all have a beautiful day, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.